Well, welcome everybody. Appreciate you all coming out. This is certainly an exciting time for me with the players back in town and the release of the schedule, and the draft right around the corner. It's a lot of excitement here. Before we begin, I just want to thank my staff for the work they do. I mean, they're on the road all year and make a ton of sacrifices, spend a lot of time away from their family, and they do a tremendous job. I'm very blessed and fortunate to work with a great staff. So it's been a lot of fun, and we certainly are excited for the upcoming draft to add to the talent we already have on this team. And we're looking to follow up on a great 18th season with a strong 19th season and hopefully end in Miami. So with that, I'll take your questions.
Reid, with everything you guys have done since the end of the season, changing the defensive coordinator and staff and all the players, can you just describe how much this feels like a brand new enterprise almost in some ways? And obviously, to what degree the continuity on offense is part of what you're relying on.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I think the new staff we have on the defensive side, I think they bring a lot of energy and a lot of juice, and it's been a fun process for us. And Coach Reid has been great. This time of year they're diving into scheme stuff and trying to drop more plays for Pat in the offense, and he's very. It's tough to pry those coaches away, but he's been great. And then Spags and his staff have just been awesome to work with. Great dialogue. We're showing him the players that we like and the attributes that we like, and we're trying to marry that up with the scheme and the best fit. So it's been a great process, and we actually are going to meet with the offensive staff today, the defensive staff tomorrow, to put the final touches on it. But we're excited about it, and we think we're in position to do a lot of great things.
And just one quick follow-up with that. You almost couldn't have been closer to going to the Super Bowl, and I guess you could make the case you're that close. How do you have continuity? But you guys have kind of gone the opposite way to just say we got to repair all that and restart. Can you just describe the thought process that went into that?
Yeah, well, I think we're just we want to take the next step, and certainly it goes without saying our offense was pretty efficient last year, and I think we're always looking to improve and get better, and we felt change was best on that side of things, and like I said, and there's also some familiarity with Coach and Spags having worked before, so it's there is that element of being able to get the process moving sooner, because it's not like these coaches are foreign and they don't know each other. They have a great working relationship, and some scheme stuff's different, but I think when you have or you begin with a similar philosophy on how you build a program, those similarities help. And like I said, I had the chance to work with Spags for a year in Philly, so we kind of hit the ground running, and I think we're a lot further along than people think, and we're excited about it.
Brett, I know you like to go into the draft without any obvious holes on the roster where you have to go get a guy at a certain spot. How do you feel about the roster in that regard right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel good about the roster. Certainly, we didn't win the Super Bowl, so I mean, we can get better. Sure. And I think all across the board, I think that there's talent and that we can acquire, and we can get more depth on both sides of the football, and I think that's what makes it fun and exciting. I don't think we're going in there. I mean, there's certainly obviously there's some specific areas that may be more apparent, or you may think, but I think. The things that you do in free agency kind of protect yourself in the draft, so you don't have to take a player, that you feel is a second or third round value in the first round. So you make some moves in the drafts, and maybe some moves are big, like the Honey Badger, and some smaller moves. But I think what you do is you protect yourself, and that's really one of the key elements of free agency. You go in there, and they don't have to be all big name splashes, but if you can get guys like a Bashaud Breeland or a Damian Wilson to protect yourselves from overdrafting players. And I feel like this year, with the exception of quarterback, I mean, I think anything's on the table in that first round.
How do you feel about specifically where you are in corner, safety, and wide receiver?
Yeah, I think we just need more depth certainly more depth on both sides there. I think that Kendall and what Shavarius Ward did last year are certainly positives for us, and we have two guys that we know are good players. I think Bashaud had mentioned it in one of our in-house interviews that he went through that injury, and toward the end of last year he started picking his game up. So I think with a full offseason and OTAs, I think he'll be the guy's played in the league and he started at a pretty high level. So I think we feel pretty good there, but we certainly need to get better. We need to get younger, and same thing with safety. I think with having Dan back and certainly the Honey Badger, I think Lucas is a guy that I think flashed last year and showed he can do some great things. And we're really excited about Armani. He looked great coming in here for the offseason, and he's another guy we think we can take a big step. So I think that we will certainly be looking at all those areas, but I feel good about where we are to start the season before the draft.
Basically all your draft picks on defensive players last year. How much does this change defensive philosophy and new defensive coordinator play into their skill set in your hopes of having this defense move forward?
Yeah, well, I think one of the good things about, I don't think that was our intent last year to go all defense. It worked out that way, and I mean, I would be shocked if we went all defense again, but it's a possibility if those guys' values just meet where we're picking. But I think the good thing about the guys we drafted last year, that they were all scheme versatile guys, and Breland was more of a 4-3 end, and Doran can certainly play Will, and schematically from the secondary standpoint, those guys are all interchangeable. So getting guys like Armani and Shavarius Ward really apply across the board. But I think the guys that we drafted last year, again, they had scheme versatility when we drafted them, so I think they'll fit nicely in this thing. But I don't think that that was our intent last year. But I feel like we're in a pretty good place. We certainly need to get better, and that's what this time of the season is for. But we're excited about having a 1 and 2-2s this year, and then a 1 and 2-2s next year. I think that's advantageous for a team like the Chiefs. The positive is you win games and you get a chance to compete for Super Bowls. The negative is you're picking at the bottom of the draft every year. So the more picks you have, the better, because it allows you to navigate the board. So I think having a 1 and 2-2s this year and next year will be helpful for us.
From last year, Brett, that you guys, because you weren't having a first round pick, you could kind of see how the board played out compared to what actually occurred in the draft. How much did last year experience sort of help you in this year? What did you learn from that, given where you are right now in the first?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, listen, you're going to learn stuff every year, and every draft is different because of the talent pool. I mean, some years, it all depends on how it's skewed. And, some years you may have a ton of corners, or like this year, a ton of defensive linemen. But I think every year, I think it's important to just go through the you learn every year, but I think, just where you need to be and how aggressive or how passive you need to be. And I think, for me, it's just learning how to be passive, I guess, more so than be aggressive, because I'm kind of wired to just go up and get a guy. But no, I think you learn something every year. And listen, that was tough. You don't have a first-round pick, and then you don't pick till late in the second. So it was almost like we entered last year with like a third-round pick. I mean, these names go off the board, and you get a little impatient. But it'll be a little bit different this year when you have some more picks to work with.
Do you feel like passivity is an attribute that needs to be more valued?
Yeah. Listen.
In your career, given sort of the reputation that you've had around the league?
Well, I think, there's a balance in everything. So I think you got to stay true to who you are. It's kind of what got you here. But at the same time, you learn, and, you could be more tactical in certain areas. But got a great staff around me. I don't think any GM goes into the draft and just starts pulling off names all by themselves. They surround themselves with smart people, and I have smart people around me. So I think it's a good balance.
You guys have been making minor changes to the 90 here and there, but specifically why the Agba trade, and then what led you to bring Reeser back on board?
Well, I think starting with Keith, I think he was a guy that it was unfortunate he had that quad injury, I think, last year. And I think he was a guy that was probably going to make our 90-man roster. He was a guy that we liked coming out of Florida Atlantic, and he got hurt, didn't go to the combine. And, those guys are a little bit tricky in the draft because you don't know if they're going to, get drafted at all or how late they'll fall. And putting a value on those guys are sometimes difficult. So the Niners drafted him, and we always monitored him a little, and he got off to a slow start, and then he had another injury, and then we got him on the practice squad, and he kind of flashed a little and looked like the old Reeser that was at Florida Atlantic. And then I think the Denver game when Pat started, when Alex was still here, he started and had a pretty good game, and we were excited about him, and then he got hurt. But I think if he would have stayed healthy, he would have made our 90-man roster. And then he goes to the AAF, and he was one of the best players there, and that's a testament to him, and just to continue to work. And we thought it made sense, and he was familiar with us, and we were familiar with him. And then the Agba trade, I think, was a trade that I think worked well for both John and I. When they did the Beckham trade, I think the safety was involved in that, right? And then I think they let a safety go. So they were short on numbers, and they needed depth. And then with us going to a 4-3 scheme and looking for a longer, taller defensive lineman, I think we could have used some depth as well. So I think that was a rare case where I think we both benefited from them getting a depth level safety and us getting a depth level defensive lineman.
Brad, I wanted to ask you about something you said earlier in the offseason. I think it was at the combine. You were talking about Ward, and you said, well, he played really well for us toward the end of the year, but not a lot of video there, so we're not sure, exactly what we can trust. How much does a guy have to play? Do you have to see him play before you know you can trust what you've got there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I don't know if I have a specific number of games, but I mean, I think, yeah, I think you would probably need to see the guy play almost a full season. I think to go around the clock one time, 1 year, and to see everything, especially in the division, they'll see you twice. So I think when a player comes into a program and is able to go through conference play twice, maybe the first time the coordinators won't pick it up and you won't play him again. But if you're playing the Raiders, we'll see if they made the adjustments and you made the adjustments, or the Chargers or the Broncos. So I think once you go through that schedule, conference schedule twice, I think you kind of see it's a pretty good gauge of where you are with those guys.
Hey, Brett, building off that, when you mentioned not wanting to you want to protect yourself from overreaching a bit, did Pat's season allow you to approach this draft maybe different, knowing what the quarterback situation can do for your team versus going into last season when he hadn't played yet?
I don't think so. I think we know that we're close, and we have a pretty good team, and we were inches away from going to Atlanta for a Super Bowl, and I think there's no one more driven than Coach and our staff up there to get this thing, and we're not trying to build for the future. We're trying to win now, and we're going to stay aggressive, and we're going to try to put the best roster that we possibly can out there, and there's some moves that you just can't make, but I think whatever we can do, throughout the course of this period and after this period, I don't think we're ever going to stop to be aggressive and push the envelope here, because we want to we want to put Kansas City in the best position to to win a Super Bowl.
I know that the coaching staff, this is kind of like a building block for them, but for your staff and a lot of guys behind the scenes, they fans, and a lot of us don't get to see working every day. It's kind of a culmination of what they do. Can you speak to the work that those guys do behind the scenes, and starting back, even back in August or even before that, when I started watching these guys, of just kind of what that draft weekend means for them? Yeah,
I mean, those guys do an amazing job, and it really starts right after the draft. I mean, a few weeks after the draft, we get our list for next season, and these guys are watching seniors to be. They're watching the junior season, and we usually give the guys a list of 60, 70 players to do once they leave here, and then they come back for the mandatory OTAs and get a chance to see the new guys. And they're working through that original 70-man list. Then they come to training camp, and they get a quick splash of where we are with our roster, and then they're on the road, and they're hitting these schools 2, 3, sometimes 4 times a year. They're going in, they're meeting with the coaches, and they're getting information, and they're logging play history, and then they're coming back here, and they're meeting for 17 days, then they're going to the combine, and they're going to pro days, and I mean, Senior Bowls, All-Star games. I mean, they're on the road full year, and like I said in my opening statement, I mean, they give up a lot, and they miss out a lot in family stuff, and they sacrifice a lot. So, they're just a great group, and again, they're really talented, and I've had the good fortune to work with them since I've been here. Really, all these guys I think I've worked with my entire career here, and they're kind of like, we're like a family. I mean, I see these guys more than I do my own family. So, but they're a great group of guys, and I'm fortunate to work with them. And again, they do an amazing job.
Greg, you mentioned Keith Reeser in the AAF a minute ago. How much did that league help you in evaluating these guys that were playing over there? And do you expect to add any more players that were playing in that league?
Yeah, well, I think we still have a few guys. Listen, it was good, to get that tape on Keith, because he'd been hurt and he's been out, and just to see him out there performing at the level he did was good, and there's been a number of teams to make some acquisitions from that league. We have some guys that are still on our board from that league, but now we're getting number-wise where I think as a GM you don't want to put a kid in a bad situation. So, we have a 90-man roster, and I don't know what our exact number is, but once we get to a certain point, we're going to factor in the draft selections, and then typically what we add undrafted free agents. So the last thing we want to do is bring 5 more guys in, and then after the draft add too many guys, and then you got to tell these guys, well, we got some younger guys, so you guys got to hit the road. So we wanted to just bring in guys that we felt confident would be on our 90, and to not put those guys in a bind where they could have went somewhere else. They came here, and then after the draft, we picked up 20 undrafted free agents, and we're telling these guys that we don't have enough room. So we want to be fair to them, but at the same time realize that there is some talent out there, and if we can maximize that, let's do it.
You mentioned last year, leading up to the draft, that it was important to contact other teams and let them know that you were open for business. Is it the same tenor this year, or do you have different conversations now with other teams? Really?
No, it's the same, and I think pretty much every GM. I think over the last few days, I probably spoke to 2 or 3 guys yesterday. I think I spoke to 2 or 3 guys today. They're just making sure that you're alive, and hey, here's my number. It didn't change, and let us know we're interested in trading up or down. Everybody feels the same way, so everyone's philosophy is, if I'm in a zone and the guy I really want is there, would be willing to trade up, or if I'm at that pick and the guy's gone, I'm willing to trade back. I think everybody is kind of playing the same game. I mean, unless you're picking in the top 4 or 5, when you know exactly the top 4 or 5 guys, but once you get to, like, especially where we are, like picking so late, you'll have a lot of dialogue, but there's really nothing that can be anything concrete because no one knows how the first 25 picks are going to go. But it's typical, and I typically do the same thing. Like, look, let us know. And I think the good thing to do now, though, is to not get too far ahead of yourself. But I think you can talk about value. So hypothetically, I can call a GM up and say, all right, well, in the second round, and if we want to do something in the second round, what would you be looking for, just pick-wise? Because everyone has a trade value chart index, and everyone's chart's a little bit different. And it's amazing how when you call on draft day, it's like, you like, this should be an even trade, and it never works out that way. I mean, the team always thinks you're ripping them off, or a team calls us, we always think, they're ripping us off. It's amazing. You think it's funny because we just had this conversation about an hour ago. We were going through, I think we have like 8 team charts that we've accumulated from different teams over the years, and every year, we get into a position where we're going to trade up or trade back, and we're like, yeah, that's the team, and we have their old chart, we're good, and they're like, you're way off. So but I think you can have the dialogue about everyone's going to be open to something, and I think once you get closer, you can have more concrete and firm dialogue on what it would take to do something if we get into that position, and whether that happens or not, you have to wait and see how the cards fall.
Did you feel like you were getting a bad deal when you made the Mahomes trade?
No, we got a pretty good deal there, right?
We wanted to ask you about the schedule. What are the things you look for as a GM when the schedule comes out, and what are your thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I honestly, other than us playing at Jacksonville, I don't even know the rest of our schedule because I've been in that draft room, and I mean, gosh, it's a tough league, and every game is tough week in and week out. I mean, there are no homecoming games in the NFL. I mean, you have to get ready to line up and play in these teams. I mean, the margin of victory and defeat is so thin. It's usually less than a touchdown with all these games, and I do know that we play Jacksonville and Oakland right off the bat, and I think is Baltimore our first home game.
Yeah.
But I don't ever get too far because listen, I'm just worried about this draft and worried about the offseason, and then after that, I just want to get through the preseason healthy. I mean, there's so many things that could happen from then to now with not just us, but with other teams. So it's a great league, and that's what makes the league so exciting, is that the parity in this league is like none other.
Couple more guys.
Given the way the draft went last year and the decision you all made, is there an eagerness to try to find the next skill position player on offense for Patrick, for Andy, and how comfortable do you feel that you guys are going to find that next player to maximize both the quarterback and coach?
Yeah, no, I think we're just looking to find another great player, period, offense or defense. I think the cool thing about having the league MVP is, he makes people around them that much better. So that's a luxury we have. And if we can get him another tool, I mean, we absolutely will. But I think in general, we're just looking to find playmakers on both sides of the football. I don't think we are going to be geared toward offense now because Pat is so good. But we're also aware that Pat is so good. So if there's somebody out there that can make him even better, we'll be all for it. But I think just in general, I think we just want to add playmakers anyway, and that includes special teams too.
How many offensive skill position players have you fed to Andy similar to your down the pass, whether it's Pat?
There's been a handful. It's a little bit different now. That your relationship evolves over the years where I didn't have much time with Andy. So back when I started as a coach's assistant and then a scout, and even when I first got here, my time with him was limited. So I had to make the most of it, and I had to really try to hammer things in before I left because I might not talk to him for another 3 or 4 days. I talk to him like 10 times a day now, so I mean it's a little bit different. So, but no, there's been a handful of guys on offense and defense, and we actually went through a stack yesterday on the board. But he's locked in on his scheme eval stuff right now. I went in the other day. He had index cards like that thick of. He called them my new Pat plays, so he was excited. It's fun to see him get excited like that.
Follow up on that skill position question. So with Chris Conley's departure, Sammy Watkins has injury issues in the situation with Tyreek Hill. Does that change where wide receiver is as far as your priorities going into this draft?
Yeah, I don't know if it changes the priorities. I mean, we have a good group of guys that we really like. We did get banged up there a little last year, but that is really consistent with all the positions across the board. And that's why I think you always, again, going back to the free agency period, you want to put yourself in a position where you don't have to reach, because if you just didn't have a capable starter like a Bashad Breeland, say, and then you don't want to draft a third-round corner where you can draft a first-round talent at wideout. So I think you just want to stick true to the talent, stick true to the board. There's some young guys we like. I mean, the kid from Kansas State, Pringle, I think we're really excited about. He had that great preseason game last year, hurt the hamstring. He's busted his tail in the offseason. He looks really good. So I think he's a guy that can step up and surprise. So we have some guys that are still here that maybe people don't know about or realize that we know more about. But receiver, if there's a receiver that we like early on, we absolutely wouldn't hesitate to pull the trigger.
We've learned that in the recent days that the NFL requested documents regarding the Tyreek Hill investigation on March 12th. Just have to ask, did you guys try to get any documents from the Overland Park Police, or is this a situation where the NFL told you guys to back off and that they were going to do the investigation?
Yeah, Coach kind of said it on Monday. I mean, I don't really have anything to say, in that. I think it's gonna, work itself out here, and we'll deal with the information as it comes. But like I said, there's nothing I'd probably be in the position to say right now on that.
Last year you talked about a lot about draft pockets. Just
Mhm.
where are you at in this process this year? You feel like you have a good feel
Yeah.
moving forward in this?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think the O&D line, I think it's pretty strong. I think in that first round you're going to see a lot of defensive linemen off the board early. Certainly the quarterbacks that have been talked about, I think, will go. And then after that, I think you have a really strong early pocket of defensive linemen. And then I think tackle. I think there's a nice wave of tackles, 4 or 5 guys that are going to go pretty early. I think there's some depth in the second, third, and fourth round at wideout and at tight end, which would be helpful to us. And then I think the corner, the corner class is strong. There might not be that top 10 guy that you have every year, but I think it's deep in rounds 1, 2, and 3. Really, I think the linebacker class and safety class is a little thin, if I'm being honest, but I think everywhere else there's some really good depth.
All right, we'll go Tom and then Sam. Go ahead, Pete.
Just one more. You got that additional 2 for D, and I was just wondering, would you prefer to leave those picks next year, or are you kind of in this position where now that you have 4 twos, anything is really open on the table?
Yeah, I think that's. I think you just like having options. I don't think you go in there and saying, "Well, I really want to keep these picks." I think it's good to have, but I think it would have to make sense for us because those are premium picks, and I don't think you just want to give those away. But I think just having the flexibility and the options, I think, is really what any GM wants to have choices to make.
We'll go Tom and Sam.
Brett, with the team that was inches from the Super Bowl, is NFL readiness or the ability to play right away elevated in your evaluations this year?
Yeah, I think every time, especially when you draft early on, you want guys that can come in, step in, and play. It is a battle of attrition, and you're going to lose starters, even if you're deep out of position. I think these guys need to be ready to come in and contribute and play. And I think a lot of those guys did that for us last year. Breeland was in a unique position as our first pick, even though he's a second rounder, playing a little out of position at 34 outside linebacker. But when Justin and D had some issues, I guess it was when Justin went down last year, Breeland came in and played some pretty good football and was a little out of position. So he logged a lot of snaps. Derek Nottie was basically a starter for us. He's a really good player. And we were going through some of our young guys just last week, and that guy's a lot better than people think. He's a really good player, and Armani got hurt. And then if you count Shavarius Ward in that mix too, I think all these guys stepped in and played, and Shavarius was starting for us at the end of the season. So our mindset is the same. I think we expect these guys to come in and contribute, and if they're not starting, to log a lot of snaps for us during the course of the season.
Sam, last question.
You talked some about how Spags wants a different defensive lineman maybe than Bob did. But on a sort of broader view, is there a position group that he emphasizes more than Bob did, less than Bob did?
Well, he's a secondary guy, and Steve, he's coached all over. He's been a coordinator, as we know, been a head coach, but I think he's a secondary guy by trait, and we've had a lot of dialogue, and we hit the ground running, and that was the first group we looked at. I don't think there's been a position group we looked more at than the safeties and the corners this year, and he's added some great dialogue, and he's brought in some really good coaches too. Dave Merritt and Sam Madison are awesome. I mean, they're really good, and they're intense. And there are some different traits they look for in their D-backs as well. So we've shared a lot of communication, and we've logged a lot of hours looking at this corner and safety class. So it's going to be a lot of fun.